Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Diaries of a Six-Figure Coach podcast. I am super excited to be here with an awesome guest, Pam. You're gonna love her, absolutely love her. Pam and I actually met here in Tulum at this beautiful new moon Hannah event at Ikal. And we literally met around the sacred fire in a singing circle with beautiful music and
rose petals
and Hannah on our hands and rose petals being floated onto us. And it was just this beautiful thing. And at one point we caught a glimpse of each other. And the next day, I had a message from Pam in my Instagram, I think, and she was connecting to see if I was the person that was sitting across from her when we were doing this beautiful exercise. And it wasn't me, but I was like, well, now we're connected anyways. And ever since, we've been following each other, we've been in touch, we've been having conversations. Super excited that we're going to get to spend a little bit more time soon hanging out here in this beautiful part of Mexico. And throughout this conversation and throughout us connecting, I have been looking for people to come on this podcast to talk about a few different topics that I believe are so essential for you to be able to scale your business that often aren't considered. And Pam is an incredible somatic healer. Can I say that? Somatic healer, using somatic.
I like magician more than healer.
And magician, okay.
She's a magician,
I like it. And she's going to tell us a lot more about herself. But she also focuses on something specific, which is nervous system regulation, apart from some other incredible work. And so I'm so excited that you're here, Pam. So excited.
I'm so excited to be here. I told you, like, just before we jumped in, I do podcasts all the time. This one is extra juicy for me.
Yeah.
I'm such a fan of yours. I keep telling you, like, you're actually, it's so connected to somatics and nervous system work because you are embodied. And it's very rare in the business space. And I got chills just saying that. And that's why I resonate with you, because there's so much out there that is really cool on the outside. But when you start digging into the layers, the foundations are wobbly. The same way foundations in your business have to be solid, the foundations and the anchoring in your body have to be at par with that. Otherwise, there's disharmony. And then there's no expansion. And then the person doesn't understand why. And usually what happens is the women, mostly, we end up pushing even more when it's not even about that. And I think that's something you learned and have been working on quite a bit from, just going with your content and listening to you, and the importance of being in the body.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my God. I think that is something that no one really... Well, I want to say no one talks about it, but I think it's not spoken about enough because
it's not mainstream.
That's I feel like it's not mainstream. And I think it's not something that people are consciously aware of when it comes to building thriving businesses. And what I have found, and it's funny that you say that, I feel like I've been on this path for probably by now nearly a decade of actually reconnecting with my body. And then I've really gone into the depths of it in 2022 when I went through my divorce. But I think what I've come to realize is that as I was scaling my business and as I was growing at an accelerated rate and taking on more clients and serving more of a bigger online community and holding more responsibility with my words, who I influence, who is following me, we hold a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of energy that we're navigating, and I don't think I had realized the energetic capacity that is required to be able to do that, and consequently the time and space that is required for you to be off, for you to swim in the ocean or be near water or be in nature or sit and meditate or breathe or be with soul sisters or dance. Like, it doesn't matter, right? Like, go ski, do things, like do what you love, paint, but like to be and to really do work to regulate your nervous system. And so as I was transitioning out of 2022 and made a gazillion changes, and really was like, this is something that I am pivoting and changing my business model in. My goal, my number one goal for 2023 was a regulated nervous system. Above the scaling, above the money, above the clients, above the all this other stuff. I was like, I want to go through 2023 feeling like I can breathe, feeling fucking fantastic. And I want to show up like that. And I want to embody and be a representation of the possibility of having both. And
3 months in, I can tell you your objective is reached, because clearly you exude that. You're talking in my Kundalini, like my energy is like, whoa, I'm like buzzing so much. So that's, it's a beautiful goal, but most people, it takes grit. It takes, I'm going to use a word. It takes commitment to oneself. I know you like that word because I listen to you and you talk about being committed to your business.
Yes.
You used the word responsible a few times. One of the medicines I use the most is Ho'oponopono. And the first pillar of Ho'oponopono is I love you. And people really don't understand it. Like, I got certified in it and I've been practicing it. And it's really a model in everything I do, including business. But I love you is taking 100% responsibility for everything. Not in the, I'm beating myself up because this happened, but this happened. And then you take your own hand and you say, and I love myself and I appreciate myself anyway.
And I love and I appreciate myself anyways.
Anyway, yeah. You know, when you're tapping and you're doing, and I love and I appreciate myself, that's exactly what the I love you is. And I think that the capacity of our businesses are a reflection of our capacity to unconditionally love ourselves, especially in our sphere, right? When we're entrepreneurs and we're literally, our soul is on our sleeve. And there's two aspects of what I do. And that's why I like the word magician, because versus healer, first of all, I don't believe in healing. That's something I've transmuted over the past 2 years, because there's nothing to heal. We are whole. We just need to remember that we're whole. There isn't anything that's broken or that needs to be corrected. We just need to remember. And you very rightfully said, when we're not conscious of it. So it's all about remembering and bringing to our consciousness, and not in our minds, because most people in our industry do it through the mind, and that's great. But if you really understand the way the systems, not just the nervous system, because you have the nervous system, you have the chakra system, you have the nadi system. And it's very interesting because when you start digging and going down rabbit holes of all the different schools, I have a graphic that I usually share when I start working with clients. And it's because you see that inside you have this little alien with like tentacles, and it's all connected. And it's all an ecosystem of how everything works together. And so if you're not able to be in your body and you're just in your mind, from here to the bottom, like when you look at the chakra system or even the vagus nerve, the throat to the root is 80%. The throat to the head is 20%. So right now in our field, most people are using 20% of what is accessible to them, because we are literally feet walking around and upper bodies walking around disconnected in life. And what happens when you bring consciousness and you align both, you get access to that 80% and to the sacral, which is, you know, the creation center. And then, whoa, you know, whoa, what happens from there? So yes, there's obviously a scientific aspect of the nervous system, but it's very quantum as well.
Yes.
So if you go to the casino and someone tells you, okay, here you have an 80% chance of winning, and here you have a 20% chance of winning, where are you going to put your chips? In the 80%. But most people don't know because we only teach about the mind. But when we talk about subconscious programming, it's not in the mind, it's in the cells, it's in the body. Our subconscious talks through something called the fascia. So between our skin layer and the muscles, there's this gelatinous part. Like, I don't know if you've ever cleaned chicken, but between the skin and the muscle, there's like this gluey thing. And you think like, what's that for? And I know light language is something that's super trendy right now. And people who practice light language sometimes don't even know this, but it is through this membrane. And if you look at it through an electronic microscope, and if you're on YouTube, you can go Google that, the fascia, and you can see literally, it's like little highways of light fusing and connecting all of the parts in our body. Between the nervous system, between the chakra system, our organs, everything functions together. And to have a wholesome business, we have to integrate it within a wholesome ecosystem of the body. It is not exterior to us. And it's not just for entrepreneurs, by the way. If this were applied to business models worldwide, we would have world peace. Like, as simply as that. As long as we continue to see things as separate as opposed to integrated,
yes,
then it's hard to move forward.
Yeah.
We feel like we're always catching up, right? Trying to catch up.
The chase.
But the chase is a nervous system, literally, response.
Yeah.
It's running away or fighting. Right? Because when we're in that activation phase, I usually don't use a dorsal vagal, because for people, it's like, again, going back to the mind, I separate them in 3 categories. You have your green zone, where things are chill, where, you're in the zone. You know what I'm talking about. You've all been there at least once in your life. Like when you're like, yeah, it's still so good, right?
Slow, baby.
Exactly. And then when there's activation, and by the way, activation has no polarity. It's just an increase of energy. And that too, we are in a world that looks at things in a dualistic way, when duality doesn't really exist. It's a story of the mind. Both of them are mirrors of the center. And you can go wherever you want to go or come back and just have fun. And I call them the 50 shades of gray. And that's where we live, right? We experience all these shades and how we feel in them. And that's the experience. That's why we incarnated, to like get the feel of all these shades. And then you're in the red zone and you have 2 choices. So there's this surge of energy. And if you compare it to your house, for example, if you turn on the microwave, the dishwasher, the heater, the vacuum, and suddenly your electric box shuts down. So what happens in the red zone is there's overheating of the circuitry of the vagus nerve and also the fascia. Like, everything is heating up. There's too much. And there's 3 things that happen there. Things are going too fast, they're too intense, or there's not enough of something. And so you go from a state in the red zone where it's uncomfortable, but you still can, to freeze, where you can't anymore. Right? And we've been there. I know. I've heard your story of it, and we've been there, where we completely go there. And then society tells you that when you're frozen, you're a degenerate, you need medication, you're not doing your job, blah, blah, blah. When in reality, when you're in depression, what you need is deep rest. Deep rest. You need deep rest. And if you allow yourself the rest, and you allow yourself to go within and listen to the wisdom, and listen to what, your divinity, all of your holistic systems are trying to tell you, then it's possible to go back down. But most of the time, for most people, when you're in the blue zone, that's where you go and get help, because you need co-regulation. In the red zone, you can regulate on your own if you've learned. Most of us haven't, because our parents never learned and their parents didn't learn before. And it's just becoming like somewhat accessible what regulation means, right? Regulation is being able to be in your body, or like being in an airplane when there's turbulence without having to land the plane. That's the grit, the commitment you so often talk about in your stories. And that's the capacity we want to build.
Yes.
Right? Not to crash our businesses, not to emergency land. And it's very like intense, because if you've never learned, it's painful. It's like watching a 3-year-old having a tantrum in a supermarket. A kid doing that is not doing something wrong. It's just the overwhelm in his body is so strong that his only response is to throw a tantrum. And we all throw tantrums in our businesses, don't we? But we're not really aware. And then we beat ourselves up about it and we judge ourselves, versus taking full responsibility for it and welcoming those parts that were doing what they could because they only had that level of consciousness, or they only knew what they knew at that time, versus taking full responsibility, remembering that we are source, that we are infinite, that this too shall pass, and it's just a big simulation and everything's going to be fine. But that takes practice. It's like going to the gym.
Yeah, totally. Oh, I love that. And what really resonates for me about everything that you're saying is this concept about bringing it back to understanding that it's all connected. It's all one, right? And I love what you said. I've never heard anyone use this analogy about like, think about your entire body and your head's 20% and your body's 80%. But when you put it that way, it's like, dang, like, why aren't we tapping into the 80% people?
Yeah.
Right. And like, I totally feel like this is where, I mean, we are taught to be mind and head driven. We're taught to be goal oriented. And we are taught that when we achieve a certain result that's outside of us, then we get to feel a certain way. And I've certainly like flipped that, because I build business models and strategies. And I reverse engineer business strategies and models based on how you want to feel, not how you want, what you want to accomplish. And then everything else comes after, but it's all aligned with that. So I guess without knowing, I consider the 80% before we get the 20% involved, because there's so much
because
wisdom.
Your body is magical, and your body knows. So when you tune in, even without understanding it cognitively, your body knows what you need.
It does.
That's why I don't believe in the whole healing thing anymore, because it's really, once you start going back into the body, you allow it to do its natural thing. We are a supersonic mega something spaceship that can do anything. I mean, look at a scar. If you leave it alone, after a few days, it's gone. It's the same with, did you put anything on it? No. Did you have to go to hospital? No. But suddenly when it's bigger things, we just make it bigger, when in reality, it's just that we don't have the capacity to deal with something that's bigger. Remember what I said? Too much, too fast, not enough of? And you want to be even more mind blown? What we are taught is that it's a top-down system. It actually isn't. It's a down-up system. So when we receive the information, it comes from the root, which makes sense. It's the root, right? When you look at trees and the sap doesn't go down, it goes up, and then it does whatever thing it needs to do to evaporate the water, and then goes back into the leaves and goes back down. Makes sense, right? I mean, living here is just so delicious, because I have my repertoire of analogies has like, just because it's always around us, right? We're stepping into it daily living in Mexico. When you're, in Canada where it's cold half of the year and you don't see anything but white, it's hard to get those frames, right? But so what happens is the message you receive first is a message that comes from your root. So you feel it into your root, and it goes through all of your systems and goes all the way up to the mind. And I like to call them lawyers. What does a lawyer do? A lawyer fights the case, right? They're going to defend the case. So if the message that comes up is we're safe or things are okay, then it's going to send down a green light and say, okay, guys, you can chill. But if it's starting to get an orange signal, what are they going to do? The lawyers up there, they're doing their job. And that's another thing. We've demonized the ego, but the ego is just there to help us survive. At the end of the day, you are incredible. I just want, if anyone's listening to this and is having doubts, you are a miracle. Just imagine the number of things you have survived. And at the end of the day, you know, every one of our systems is there to help us survive. Where we step in as a God being, because we're all God, is how do we thrive? Chills.
Wow. This is such a powerful conversation.
Survival model to remembering our essence, which is infinite, abundant, unlimited. And that's not easy. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy all the time. It's going to be super uncomfortable. Actually, I have clients this month is very intense energetically. I have like big clients who are doing big things in the world that are in the hospital with like weird, bizarre ailments. Like one got a puck in her head at a hockey game and out of nowhere. Another one is like her knee bulged up and they thought it was a bacteria, and they can't, like all the interns have been to, they can't figure out what is going on. Once we decide to go up in the next vibration level and the next, the body will do what it needs to adjust, because the density will drop and there will be more space for light. But then my favorite word, which is never used, and it should be used in business, is integration.
I use integration.
I know, which is why I told you, like, I love you so much. You give me hope. Like when I listen to you speak, you give me hope. You give me so much hope, because I deal with so many business coaches and women that are heart leaders who are like driving amazing communities, but are struggling with a mask. It's so hard carrying this mask day in and day out. And I know I was a VP of marketing for many years, and I had supposed perfect marriage and living like in a 9.5 apartment in downtown. I was medicated to the wazoo. I could have seen a cat get run down in front of me. I would not have reacted. I was so numbed down by medication to survive. That's not the kind of life we were meant to live. Whether you work in a corporation or you work for your own, we are meant to experience this. And yes, it will be
to feel.
Yes.
To feel
yes.
good and to
yes.
be at
yes.
peace.
Yes.
Like to really be at
yes.
peace as your natural state, to be in
yes.
relaxation as your natural state, to be in
yes.
joy and abundance, because it's your natural state.
But
all the other stuff
yes.
is what's driven by all the story, but it requires you to let go of all the story, right? And that's the
I would correct that too. I don't let go, because that part will never go away. It's about integrating it. All those little stories or parts are parts of you who have protected you this far. And now I talk about grief. That's something people don't like to talk about either, but it's so present. Because once you start looking at parts that took a lot of space and you're like, you know what? I want more. That little part that's 3 years old, because it's still living as a 3-year-old in your body, is going to throw a tantrum if you don't give it what it needs, if you don't do the due diligence of explaining the same way you would to a small child. And that's, okay, somatic work, but also inner child work of going, saying, hey, I see you. I know. It's hard to let go of things. It's hard. And you've never been taught, but we can do this together. And that's where we reparent ourselves. But then people leave our lives, we change countries, dreams change. And what do you do with all of that? When you're not taught to grieve, and when we're in a society where grief is not something that is acceptable, unless it's like someone who died, and even then, oh, it's been 2 weeks, you're not back to your life, something's wrong with you. What is wrong with us that we don't respect the cycles of life?
Yeah.
That we forgot that things are cyclical all the time.
And grief is, I mean, it's a natural cycle, right? That we're going through. And, you know, it's interesting that you're mentioning that. And I mean, I don't believe in like, I believe there is no such things as like coincidence. Like I really believe we meet the people when we're ready to meet certain people, because there is a there is a connection or an activation or like, and I've really been finding everybody that has come into my life and everybody that's quite frankly been pulled out of my life, including clients that are misaligned. It's been a big learning lesson. But the thing with that is that I've learned, and this was a big lesson for me, Pam, through divorce and through walking away from 16 years in a life and a home and all this idea of stability and pillars of stability of I had a home that I owned, I was in a marriage, I had savings, I had security, I had, and I was like, goodbye, I am leaving all of this behind, and I'm going to be traveling, and I'm going to be, not having a fixed address.
So much courage.
But I think the thing that I find really I've been through was this process of grieving, but also not just grieving the things that I let go, the things that I surrendered, but actually grieving an idea of what I thought it would be, or an idea of what I thought my life even would be. So we use this we project, right? Like we project forward into the future. And so what I've really learned through all of that was really feeling all of it and calling it all in. And whenever I was in, crying, like big tears for like hours and hours and hours, and literally on the floor, not able to get off the floor. And I was like, healing tears. This is grief and it's okay to feel it. And it was so good. Like it was so good, to allow that in as much as you allow the other things in. And, I think in the coaching space, and maybe you can talk or we can touch on that, because I feel like you would have something interesting to say about this. There was this idea around high vibe, and I think it's really misunderstood. Like most people like have this idea that like I'm always like high vibe, and like listen up, like I have done a lot of freaking work. So like generally you will probably experience me as a very, what you would say, high vibe person. I love to dance, I love to be expressive, I love to be out. But really it's because it's from an embodied, integrated place of all of my emotions. But I also know that when I'm angry, I'm angry. And when I'm pissed off and frustrated, I'm that. And when I'm grieving and I'm sad, I am that. And when I'm joyful, I am that. And when I'm laughing, I'm that. And when I'm activated and my like sexy vibes, I'm that, right? Like I'm all of it. And it doesn't matter what range of emotion I am. They're not bad with, like you said, like I'm out in the web around the center and I'm somewhere dancing, right? And I'm still going to be in a high frequency, because ultimately what this has come down to me is, and this is what we started with, I love myself unconditionally. And I can say this, and it is just what it is.
It shows.
And that requires us to do work. But that's the
work. That's the work you need to do on your business. People think it's only about strategy. I believe it's the same as the nervous system. It's 80% work on you and 20% strategy. And to come back to that, when you combine, like, please don't think that I'm saying that mind stuff isn't necessary. It is. Both are necessary, because then we ostracize another part. That's not what I'm saying at all. But imagine integrating both parts. Whoa.
That's what I was saying. Masculine, feminine. Integrate.
Absolutely.
Like
absolutely.
This, right?
Yes.
Like
we're in a very huge part of activation of Christ consciousness. And when I say Christ, I don't mean the religious Christ. It's just the divine masculine that is reintegrating the scene. We went very far in the polarity of looking at what it, these past few years of getting in touch with our feminine, and then we touch the extreme. And it's so funny because it's cyclical, right? We go all the way to the edge and then we're like, oh, maybe we went a little bit too far. So we're coming back here. And now
it doesn't work. because it doesn't work. We can't just
Exactly.
be on one side.
Exactly. And now we're like,
the other.
oh, darn, now it's all
Yin
the
and
man's fault.
yang.
And then
Yes.
what? But then people don't realize that we have those parts within us. Both of them need and there's never going to be a perfect balance. The word I like to use is harmony, just like a symphony or an orchestra. Every little part has its part to play. And sometimes one will be a little bit off, and it's okay. It gets to be in harmony with everything else. Because when you think about something being balanced, it's static, it's not in movement, right? And we want movement. To emote, emotion is motion, right? Emotion is motion.
Yes.
When you feel, you move energy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you move energy, you receive. That's another thing, learning to receive. Ooh, that's another traumatic. And I call them traumatic memories. I don't call them traumas, or like you can say beliefs, but it's really memories. And then you learn how to rewire them. Because let's say you have a field, or let's talk about Canada. So there's lots of snow that just got dumped and there's no trace, right? And then the same day you walk your dog on the same little path. And then at some point you have this little snow path, right? What happens though if you stop using that one and you start taking another one? Another path is going to open up and that one is going to resorb, right? So that's what happens in our neurobiology, in our brain I call it the 3 C's. So first you have to create the context, which was the 3 questions that I asked earlier. What is going too fast? What is too intense? And what do I need? And that applies to business as much as it does to yourself. It's a rule of, just a rule of life. And when you're able to ask those questions and get curious, then you come back to the present. And when that happens, then you're connected to yourself, to your context, your environment. And from that place, you can make a choice. So when we talk about alignment, it's alignment. You need to get aligned. I'm like, I love these concepts that people come up with and they're like, let go, align. Like, what do you do with that? Like, Jesus, like, what am I supposed to do with that? But so you can use the 3C method: context, connect, and choice. Your first one is you really identify the context. And most of the time when you resolve the context, the path becomes so clear because you took the time to slow down, to look at what's going on, to change the dial maybe of the radio system, because you're coming back inside. You're not outside of your body. And then when you're connected, from there, you can ask the right questions. And trust. That's another big thing. Trust. We all love trust and we all say we believe, but then when shit hits the fan, what happens? What happens, right?
I mean, this is like an entire other 4 conversations we could open up just now. I love this, and I love this method you shared so much. I think that it's so powerful when we have tools. And one of the things that I love about our connection is that we have a very similar approach to how we support people, where we can get the mind involved in a way that's very collaborative. So it actually helps our mind think, oh, this is logical. And so then the mind buys into what you're doing. And consequently, you're actually removing some of the resistance that we naturally have that had been created through some old paths, because
by memories.
See something by memories, because you kind of learn to tap in. So I love that. So Pam, we're just getting to the end of this interview, and
so fast,
I'm sure I know. I feel like I was like, wow, where the hell did the time go? Just like this. This was so juicy. If my listeners would like to connect with you, find out more about you, where can they go? Where shall we?
Yeah. So I have a Francophone Instagram account and I have an Anglophone Instagram account. The Francophone is Pamela _Bakalian. Are you guys going to share the links? I'm not sure. Yes.
Yes, no? I will share all the links. Yes.
And the second one is my Anglo account, which is brand new, because that's a conversation we had initially. I used to do a lot of teaching in the Anglophone sphere, and then I really felt the calling to go into the Francophone sphere where there's absolutely no understanding of all of this. So now I'm going back, you know, the pendulum just goes back. It's very interesting how it's just the pendulum. So it's called Deep Dive into Feeling. That's my English Instagram account. And yeah, what I offer is two things. I offer leadership. So for heart leaders, whether you're an entrepreneur or a CEO or whatever you are, and then I offer retreats. So 4-day retreats or daily retreats to just sit down and what is a retreat? The word retreat is like you stop, you know, it's exactly what I teach in the 3 C's. Like you get to stop and ask the questions and reconnect and then envision what's next. Most of the time we're on the rat race and it's hard to just slow down. So intentionally carve, and that's what brought me to Tulum actually. It's very interesting. Well, to this area. In 2015, I came right after my separation. I told my friend who was running the retreat, if I get the check from whatever, because we were partners with my ex-husband, and if I get a check back, I'm booking for the very first time something for myself as an adult. And it was my first time doing yoga and all those things, and first time in Tulum. And the 3rd day after a mind massage, which was excruciating, painful, but so, oh my God, it just reminded me of my holiness. I just was sitting on the beach and it just said, you're going to live here. You're going to come live here with your kids. So retreats are very powerful. The deep, and they're called deep dive because you get to dive deep. And like, in French, we say descendre à la verticale is like taking something, you know,
yes,
and going really, really deep and then getting the elevation afterwards. So if this speaks to you, you know where to find me on the beach.
Love that. I love that. Well, we're going to add all your links. If you're in the Tulum area, just come track her down at the beach.
Or not.
Or at a
cenote,
or at a Temescal, you know, like all the places and fun places we do here. You know, it is a beautiful place in the world. And it's always amazing when you get that feeling somewhere and when you learn to listen. And you know, this is something that I feel like has really come out from this like conversation that we've had, that we've come back to again and again and again. Learning to listen to our body, learning to listen to the wisdom that's already there, right? Instead of always going searching somewhere outside, like
to source yourself.
Yeah, like go learn to listen. We know, like I didn't sleep last night. You're saying there's some crazy energy around. Like I've been having a wild month. I did not sleep last night. The weather was crazy.
It's the end of the astrological year, by the way. So in a week and a half, we're going into Aries season, and it's the new year. So it's the closing, and we just had like Saturn, Jupiter move. Like astrologically speaking, it's very crazy out there.
Well, let me tell you, it's been a purge on my end. A lot is coming out of me right now.
Did you see the lightning last night? It was insane. Yeah. It was like a show.
Oh yeah, I was like, I felt like the weather last night. Like that is how I felt. I was like rolling and I couldn't sleep, and I was like, oh my God. And then but you know, learning to listen, I woke up this morning and it was like, go do your workouts again, go move again.
Yeah.
Like I do these
I started yoga yesterday workouts,
and I was like, every day I was like, no more excuses. It was like somebody like being like, and I found myself literally, you know, I just went and did it and it felt so good. And you know, here I am feeling great. I don't know, I slept maybe 3 hours last night, but I don't feel it, you know, but it's really this learning to listen. And I think this is for everything. And I love that you brought that up, and I can't wait for people to connect more with you. So Pam, thank you so much.
So much for having me. It's been an honor.
Oh my God.
I will say it again. I'm such a fan. Your clients are so lucky to have you. For real though. For real.
I am going to just, you know, take that in like this, like beautiful warm hug and receive that beauty. And I'm just so grateful that we are connected and that we met here and that you shared all this. incredible knowledge with us. And I would highly encourage everyone to go follow Pam on her Instagram, connect with her. She's a beautiful, beautiful soul. Go say hi. Don't be a stranger. If you have questions, like, she is a wealth of knowledge, as you can see. And if you want to find out about those retreats, get in touch. So Pam, thank you so much. We'll be back next week, and I will chat with you all soon. Bye.